The Biden administration is slow to act as millions are booted off Medicaid, advocates say. Associate Ed Press. Up to 30 million of the poorest Americans could be purged from the Medicaid program, many the result of error-ridden state reviews that poverty experts say the Biden administration is not doing enough to stop. The projections from the health consulting firm Avalier come as states undertake a sweeping reevaluation of the 94 million people enrolled in Medicaid, government's health insurance for the neediest Americans. A host of problems have surfaced across the country, including hours-long phone. Below are your comments. Why should seniors have to decide between healthcare and eating? They paid for Social Security and Medicare every payday. Medicare has a monthly cost. Medicare has co-pays, 15%. Medicare does not cover drugs, must pay a monthly premium for limited coverage. Same goes for dental vision hearing. I live in Indiana and finally understand states' rights to treat people any way they see fit. Especially senior citizens who rely on truth and honesty when dealing with state government. I was on a Medicaid program but aged out. Nowhere in the paperwork informed me this would affect my participation. The states are doing it and they want the federal government to fix it. Do you notice the problem? This is not a federal issue rather than a state issue. People need to pay attention to who they vote for in their home state rather than expecting changes at the federal level. All funding needs to be removed from the states as they play games and steal taxpayer funds and relocate the money to. Normally don't comment on here, but love to hear the people's thoughts. Heart. My beautiful daughter who is challenged with autism diabetes also with balance issues is a victim of being kicked from SSI and Medicaid. Next news. Top U.S. House Republican Johnson endorses Trump for president. Reuters. U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson, the highest-ranking Republican in Congress, endorsed Donald Trump for the Republican presidential nomination on Tuesday, an unsurprising move that underlines the grip the former president holds on much of the party's establishment. I'm all in for President Trump, Johnson said on CNBC. A representative for the speaker did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Below are your comments. So, Trump believed, deep in his heart, without any concrete evidence, that the election was fraudulent. He lost the popular vote both times, by millions, even more bigly the second time than the first, and he actually thought that Democrats could cheat that much, and that what he really means that when Trump loses the election, he will do his own insurrection and refuse to certify the election results. Remember that he only got his job because Trump made a strong suggestion to Republicans. Trump owns him and the whole world knows it. Sure, you're all in for Trump. But what about the next guy? Because Trump isn't going to live forever. And Trump has already promised to destroy the institutions that protect the rights of every American citizen. not just those of your political rivals. So what happens next time when you have a Lao? It's actually funny, nobody, I mean no citizen, is going to change their minds as a result of his endorsement. Does anyone think that there is a Biden voter out there that will see the endorsement and change the IR mind? Vote for a Democrat for every office until the GOP regains sanity. It's our only hope. Next news. Factbox Trump's second-term agenda. Deportations, trade wars, tent cities. Reuters. Washington. Reuters. Republican Donald Trump is planning to punish his political enemies, deport millions of migrants and reshape global trade with pricey tariffs if he wins a second White House term in the November 2024 presidential election, according to his campaign and media reports. Trump has floated the idea of a 10% tariff on all goods imported into the United States, a move he would eliminate the trade deficit, but one critics say would lead to higher prices for American consumers. Below are your comments. Considering Trump hardly did anything amazing in his first term, I doubt he would in his second. People just have fantasies of what Trump did, and who he is. I don't advocate violence, and I'd rather not wish anyone ill. But the terrifying prospect of this one getting back in office is making me wish his McDonald's life style would catch up with him sooner rather than later. This country won't survive a second term as strategized above. The one thing we know is that it would be a good day for Putin if Trump ever got back in the White House. Fortunately, the Constitution, Sec. 3 of the 14th Amendment, prohibits Trump from running again due to his role in the J6 insurrection. The religious hypocrites who support this person should ask themselves, is this what Jesus would do? Trump and his minions plan to put Americans who disagree with him into psychiatric hospitals and holding centers. The last time he tried to seize power was just a rehearsal. Next time he will have surrounded himself with like-minded, fascist people at all the levers of power. Next news. More than 500 U.S. officials sign letter protesting Biden's Israel policy. The New York Times. More than 400 political appointees and staff members representing some 40 government agencies sent a letter to President Joe Biden on Tuesday protesting his support of Israel in its war in the Gaza Strip. The letter, part of growing internal dissent over the administration's support of the war, calls on the president to seek an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and to push Israel to allow humanitarian aid into the territory. It is the latest of several protest letters from officials throughout the BI. Below are your comments. Imagine 400 government officials from any one of our allies, signing an anonymous letter, stating that their country should demand a ceasefire between the Taliban and the U.S. after 9/11. It wouldn't feel like that nation was still an ally. It would feel like that nation was strongly influenced by. There was a time when people would resign in protest, rather than submit an anonymous letter. Of course, that requires a person to actually assume responsibility for her actions, and we can't have that, can we? Face with rolling eyes, face with rolling eyes. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, judges destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, government destroys freedom, the press destroys information, and banks destroy the economy. Any questions? They are entitled to their opinion but acting as a group in a manner contrary to the government's policy should not be permitted. They are government employees and should act like it. They should support government policy or be quiet. Anything else should result in termination. Next news. Trump campaign officials try to play down contentious 2025 plans. The New York Times. Two top officials on former President Donald Trump's 2024 campaign on Monday sought to distance his campaign team from news reports about plans for what he would do if voters return him to the White House. Susie Wiles and Chris LaChivita, who are effectively Trump's campaign managers, issued a joint statement after a spate of articles, many in the New York Times, about plans for 2025 developed by the campaign itself, and trumpeted on the trail by Trump, as well as efforts by outside groups led by. Below are your comments. You put it in writing. He keeps telling us what he intends to do. He tried many times to do it when he was president. The entire GOP refuses to disavow it. But, sure, just speculation. Anyone who doesn't think a Trump presidency would end our form of government as we know it just hasn't paid any. I'm still trying to figure out what type of people would see Donnie and think he's fit to lead our country with multiple criminal actions and decades-long records of deceit. Looking around at my neighbors and people I meet on a daily basis, I'm constantly wondering if these individuals value crimin. If you are thinking of supporting this man, read Project 2025 and listen to what he tells his followers. He may be lying, but best to believe him this time. Next news. Nikki Haley unveils dozens of new endorsers in pivotal Iowa after GOP debate boost USA Today. Nikki Haley is unveiling 72 new endorsements as she fights to distinguish herself as the top alternative to Donald Trump in the 2024 Iowa caucuses. Below are your comments. Personally, I think Haley has the best chance of beating Biden. The problem for her is the idea that she thinks she needs to move far right to do it. If she went moderate to centrist, I think she would do well. Yeah, I know the crazies back Trump, but in the end they don't love where the country is. Endorsements are very outdated. 50, maybe 70 years ago a newspaper, union leader or politician's endorsement may have meant something. Today that isn't so. Endorsements are just an anachronism, like Haley's ubiquitous comments about heels. Maybe influential or catchy in the 1950s but not today. Let me know when endorsements win elections. Until then I think it's votes. She definitely doesn't have them in IA. Her and Ronnie are fighting for second place and to see who is taller. Imagine putting this much effort into not being president. Like not even close. Y'all are like way behind a failed game show host who has 94 indictments. Goodness. Good for Ms. I think she is a good candidate. But I will say, I don't care who endorses the candidates for whom I vote. Next news. GOP senator challenges Teamsters president to fight at Senate hearing. CBS News. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here, Gop Sen. Marquane Mullen told Teamsters president Sean O'Brien. Below are your comments. This is the new Republican modus operandi. If they don't get their way or win any election, they either try to reverse the election results or resort to violence or both. So democracy only works for Republicans if they are winning. Any real mixed martial artist would never act like that. Disrespecting not just his teachers and trainers, but the office as well. Why is the GOP just always so wrong? I'm amazed at how poorly they approach decision-making. My parents would be disgusted by the new party, or lack of a party, more accurately. Do you know how difficult it is to raise kids these days with this kind of stuff from our elected leaders and social media? Yet, supposedly religious and conservative people keep voting for these clowns. Man, society has just fallen into the deep end. 150 years ago, if you insulted a man or questioned his honor, you would be challenged to a duel. The senator, being an MMA fighter, has a big advantage in a fistfight. If it was a duel, I don't think that he would be so brave. Next news. China receives U.S. equipment to make advanced chips despite new rules report. Reuters. Chinese companies are buying up U.S. chip-making equipment to make advanced semiconductors, despite a raft of new export curbs aimed at thwarting advances in the country's semiconductor industry, a congressional report said on Tuesday. The 741-page annual report, released by the House of Representatives Bipartisan Select Committee on China, takes aim at the Biden administration's October 2022 export curbs, which seek to bar Chinese chipmakers from getting U.S. chip-making tools if they would be used. Below are your comments. Our government and businesses are excellent in putting money in the hands of those who will use it against us. With numerous human rights issues, and strong ties to enemies of the U.S., not to mention no forthcoming ramifications for inflicting an economic standstill as a result of COVID, inviting Xi to the U.S. and doing business with China is still deemed permissible. Don't be surprised to see future real estate Chinese companies are buying up U.S. chip-making equipment to make advanced semiconductors, despite a raft of new export curbs aimed at thwarting advances in the country's semiconductor industry, a congressional report said on Tuesday. 10% for the big guy. Next news. Ukraine indicts officials linked to efforts to investigate the Bidens. The New York Times. Kyiv, Ukraine. Ukrainian police and prosecutors have accused two politicians and a former prosecutor of treason, saying they colluded with a Russian intelligence agency in aiding an effort by Rudy Giuliani several years ago to tie the Biden family to corruption in Ukraine. Those accused include Kostyantin Kulik, a former Ukrainian deputy prosecutor general who had drafted a memo in 2019 suggesting Ukraine investigate Hunter Biden, President Joe Biden's son, for his role serving on the board of. Below are your comments. Is this connected to impeachment? 1. The perfect phone call. Why now? I think the Ukraine will soon want more U.S. military aid from the Biden administration. And the corruption of Ukraine continues to march. Hunter had no bleep and no experience to merit a place on the Burisma board, paying somewhere between and $50,000 and $83,000 per month, depending upon source. So now they are running interference for the family. They had to fire their regional recruiters. I mean, if you still don't believe the corruption, then I'm not sure what to tell you. I really hope you Trump supporters have learned a valuable lesson from all this. Next news. Second former Santos aide pleads guilty. The Hill. George Santos's RNY former fundraiser admitted to impersonating a House leadership aide and charging donors' credit cards without authorization while working for Santos, becoming the indicted congressman's second ex-aide to plead guilty. Samuel Mealy, 27, pleaded guilty on Tuesday to one count of wire fraud and stipulated to committing access device fraud, according to a spokesperson for the. Below are your comments. At what point did we stop teaching our people to discern truth from falsehoods? At what point did we stop listening to our parents and grandparents about the benefits of critical thinking? At what point did we stop questioning statements and simply, blindly, accept statements as George Santos must feel really embarrassed over the fact that he hired him? Add that to his former campaign treasurer taking a plea deal. How could they have passed what would have been an in-depth vetting by Santos? How long before the Santos impersonator appears for another skit on late night? It's just a matter of time for Santos. Birds of a feather and all that jazz. Christ, Santos is listed as a lawmaker? We're in trouble. Expel him. Congress, do your job! ! Next news. Mike Johnson in 2015. Trump is dangerous and lacks the character to be president. HuffPost. In a since-deleted Facebook post, the GOP House Speaker reportedly said Trump was unfit because will break more things than he fixes. Below are your comments. All these people, GOP, that said true things about Trump are now biting their tongues afraid to man up and continue to say those things they believed in the past and true now are his strong supporters. Morality, respect for each other and pursuit of what is right that were once Americans' strength. His opinion of Putin's puppet was as correct then as it still is today. I wonder what made him change his mind. It's not as if Trump has changed his character for the better since then. Everyone in the GOP knew, and still knows, that Trump is unfit for office. They support him because that's the only way they can stay in office, and they value power more than their principles. Holier than thou Johnson is no different. He talks a great game about the need for a moral center, but In another article on Yahoo, Steve Bannon said he sees Trump as a moderate in the MAGA movement and that in the future, they'll have farther right candidates and that someday, we'd wish for Trump. Next news. Tricky politics on menu for China's Xi at U.S. business dinner. Reuters. Top business leaders in the United States are expected to dine with Chinese President Xi Jinping in San Francisco on Wednesday as he seeks to court American companies and counter his country's recent struggles to entice foreign investment. The dinner on the margins of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) forum will follow a day of talks between Xi and U.S. President Joe Biden, aimed at stabilizing fraught ties between the world's two largest economies. For American businesses, it will. Below are your comments. Geopolitics had never been easy since the first two cavemen faced off. The key is if each recognize the red line of each. Ukraine is a great example of the West reached past the Russian red line. Why Yahoo, rejected or waiting for approval? It is fact-based truths. Do not get bleeped in by this dictator. Look at what happened to U.S. and foreign companies that were doing business in Russia after invading Ukraine. What do you think will happen when China attacks Taiwan or any other? Give him beans and francs. Explain to the clown that Obama already ate Joe Biden's dog. If that doesn't do it, give him meow chow mein using Bill Clinton's cat socks. Next news. U.S. Senate panel moves toward ending abortion-related military promotions blockade. Reuters. Washington. Reuters, a Democratic-led U.S. Senate committee advanced legislation on Tuesday that would clear the way for the quick confirmation of hundreds of military promotions that one Republican senator has been delaying for months to protest Defense Department abortion policy. The Rules Committee voted 9-7 along party lines to send the resolution for a vote in the full Senate. Senate Democrats wrote the legislation in response to Senator Tommy Tuberville's refusal since February to Below are your comments. Nothing says I'm a conservative like leaving the military unprepared. It seems really crazy that one person could stop military promotions. They're just too important for the country's safety. Awesome. And if they can't get 10 Republicans to vote along with Democrats to change the rule, then it will be revealed that the majority of Senate Republicans are with Tuberville. No more hiding now. Tuberville's campaign left the Marine Corps without a commandant for the first time in more than 100 years. This pseudo-religious quack needs a good colonoscopy in his ear, then tried for treason. Next news. Biden's economic messaging should hit Trump and highlight his mistakes, data reveals. The Guardian. Biden can revive ailing poll numbers by reminding voters Trump was a threat to Social Security and taxes for the wealthy. Below are your comments. I agree. The contrast to the disaster of Trump's term and what he did to hurt our economy needs to be a RCIAL on TV played over and over again. He was definitely riding on the coattails of President Obama's economy and Trump's biggest break was to him and his cohorts. Please wait a moment. Since Ronald Reagan in the 80s, every Republican president has had lower growth and employment than the Democratic presidents. The one thing that Republicans seem really good at is giving away huge permanent tax breaks to their ultra-wealthy donors, leaving the rest of us with plenty more debt to pay. The trouble with Bidenomics is that while the top-line numbers look pretty good, it hasn't translated to relief for Americans when they're paying their bills. You can talk about the GDP, low inflation and low unemployment all you want and it won't make much of a difference when the average month Trader Trump's economic record. Next news. House readies vote to prevent a government shutdown as Speaker Johnson relies on Democrats for help. Associated Press. The House prepared on Tuesday for a vote to prevent a government shutdown, with new Republican Speaker Mike Johnson forced to reach across the aisle to Democrats when hard-right conservatives revolted against his plan to keep the federal government running into the new year. Johnson was willing to leave his right Florida NK Republicans behind and work with Democrats. The same political move that cost the last House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, his job just weeks ago. This time, Johnson of Louisiana. Below are your comments. Working together, what a shocking idea. Kudos if works. If the are so concerned about the spending bill, let's start by cutting their paychecks down to 1/4 of what they are collecting. Bipartisanship is how our government should work. That's why the Freedom Caucus hates it and punished McCarthy for it, because they hate the government and want to burn it all down. Please wait a moment. So, the U.S. thinks the world should obey everything it says or does. Those days are long gone. Next news. Biden administration bolsters effort to battle anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in schools. NBC News. The Biden administration is rolling out new tools Tuesday to address the continued uptick of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on college campuses nationwide following the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war last month, according to a White House official. Below are your comments. One group is actively asking to wipe the other out from the river to the sea. It's a bit different to not want people here who hate America and the West who are now protesting in our streets by the hundreds of thousands. That should wake a few of you up to see a problem of who is already here. Have you been on a college campus lately? Gone are the days of political debates, they've been replaced with a hive mentality where anyone not following the collective are bullied and attacked. We've all witnessed these acts where conservative speakers are attacked, shouted out and forced to Anti-Semitism is coincidence and biology-based Jew hate. Islamophobia is a rational belief that Muslims will bleep you. These are two different things entirely. Next news. Michigan judge says Trump can stay on primary ballot, rejecting challenge under insurrection clause. Associated Press. A Michigan judge ruled Tuesday that former President Donald Trump will remain on the state's primary ballot, dealing a blow to the effort to stop Trump's candidacy with a Civil War-era constitutional clause. It marks the second time in a week that a state court declined to remove Trump from a primary ballot under the insurrection provision of the 14th Amendment. In Michigan, Court of Claims Judge James Redford rejected arguments that Trump's role in the Jan. 6, 2021, attack on the U.S. Capitol. Below are your comments. The Constitution trumps any state laws. So it must be okay for some less than 35 years old, or someone who was born in another country to run for president unless Congress votes to disallow it. That's nonsense. The Constitution has already been approved by Congress. This ruling will cause some strong feelings, politically loaded accusations, stupid questions to imp. Lee corruption to deflect, etc. It's about the actual law. And not a law you think applies based on personal political ideology. Next news. With infants at risk, Biden says Gaza hospitals must be protected. CBS News. Biden calls for Gaza hospitals to be protected as Israeli troops surround the biggest medical facility. And infants' lives are caught in the middle of the war with Hamas. Below are your comments. Since Hamas will not agree to let the Red Cross, or another third party, administer the hospitals and schools in Gaza, then I think we can assume they are using them for military purposes and they do not want to be found out. They need to be removed from these locations one way. We're in a catch-22 situation. Hamas has safety under the hospital. How do you fight Hamas without hurting innocent people? Hamas is smarter than their adversaries. Bring in some ambulances and evacuate them. Monsters do this. What if it was our country that was being invaded and the invaders were as ruthless as Hamas, cutting off our babies' heads and burning them alive? Raping the women many times over and over? Would we ever call for a ceasefire from our military to root them out? I doubt that very much. It comes. Next news. Biden honors Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights in the return of an NHL tradition. Associated Press. President Joe Biden joked about ignoring his sagging poll numbers in Nevada and thanked the NHL's Vegas Golden Knights for their role in helping the city recover from the 2017 mass bleeping when he honored them Monday at a White House ceremony for winning the Stanley Cup. Taking a brief respite from world events, Biden marveled at a hockey team that plays in the desert sea, celebrating a championship, and shined a spotlight not only on the Golden Knights' on-ice accomplishments but the organization's. Below are your comments. As a Las Vegas resident since 1995 and Golden Knights supporter since the beginning, all I can say is, I can't wait till that piece of rear-end waste is out of the White House or dead. Joe said, I haven't had anything this stiff in my hands in some time. What a great feel-good story from Yahoo in a country turning to. Joe told them that his kitchen caught on fire once and his son was bleeped playing hockey. Don't blame me, I voted for Trump. Next news. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, the FBI and Turkey. What to know about the controversy? Yahoo News. Authorities raided the home of a top Adams campaign staffer in addition to seizing the mayor's phone. Below are your comments. With the usual kickbacks on construction and having Turkey sending in the bribery dough, Adams is living large. As he said, Bob Menendez has Egypt, Hunter Biden China, and I have Turkey. Life is good. So, let me get this straight. The weaponized DOJ is going after a Democratic mayor? Doesn't sound so weaponized now. What to know is anyone that calls out Biden on his failed policies Dems or reps gets investigated. From what I understand, a foreign person gave him a campaign contribution and the mayor is accused of waving through a fire inspection on a building. You have to cover your butt. Did he let this inspection pass? Who knows? Did he pressure someone? Everything is political, everything. Someone wanted H. Here's what you need to know. Next news. Border crossings by Venezuelans drop after Biden starts deportations. CBS News. The number of Venezuelans crossing the U.S.-Mexico border unlawfully dropped by 46% in October, when the Biden administration started deportations to Venezuela. Below are your comments. Our homeless problem is already out of control. No legal citizens can find affordable housing. Our schools are already failing unless they're private. There's no money now for existing social programs because budgets are so strained. Mass illegal immigration makes all these problems much worse. Okay, but what I want to see are the numbers of how many came into the U.S. versus how many were sent back. Can someone give me those numbers? They act like Republicans just long enough to get re-elected. You could have had it all along. If people don't wake up, it will be back to the status quo after the election. This is meaningless. Far too many have been allowed to stay here and many more will continue to come expecting to be ACO. Medicaid. Next news. Goldberg. After Biden's bad news week, the campaign has only one choice. LA Times. The president's salvation won't come from pro-Biden fans but by shoring up and adding to the legion of anti-Trump voters. Below are your comments. I'm going to try to post something that will not be rejected or under review, of which I must hold an all-time record. A few years ago, I took a vacation out west, to the beautiful states of South Dakota, Wyoming and Montana. Being an animal lover, I enjoyed watching bison, wild donkeys and wild ho. It's really a vote for democracy or autocracy. It's that simple. The economy is so bad that the TSA is predicting 30 million people will be flying to visit family and friends for their Thanksgiving meal during a 12-day stretch starting Friday, November 17, 2023. AAA forecasts there will be 55 million people traveling, including more than 49 million Americans driving. Next news. Biden administration staff sign open letter demanding ceasefire in Israel-Hamas war. NBC News. More than 400 employees of President Joe Biden's administration have signed an open letter demanding he pursue a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war that has bleeped thousands of civilians thus far. Below are your comments. And these 400 geniuses expect Hamas to respect this ceasefire, or at least long enough for them to rearm and attack again? I would fire them all. Doesn't Biden run this country as the president? I would fire them all. It only show who running this country. Biden is weak and need to put his foot down to his staff. No ceasefire, until Hamas is completely destroyed and their leaders are hanging on gallows in Jerusalem or their heads ARPLCED on spikes at the entrance to the city. Biden has lost my vote. Next news. Trial rescheduled for April for former ND lawmaker accused of traveling for sex with minor. Associated Press. A federal judge has rescheduled the trial for a former North Dakota lawmaker accused of traveling to Prague with the intent of paying for sex with a minor. Former Republican State Senator Ray Holmberg, 79, of Grand Forks, was indicted last month and set for our trial on deck. Federal prosecutors did not object, according to his motion. Below are your comments. Once again, the party of family values. Just, exactly, what values, remains to be determined. I imagine he is on the blue pill. I hope his former students are interviewed. I'd be curious as to what they have to say. I love the family values that are on display in all political parties these days. Oh, I thought this was a story about Matt Gaetz. Next news. House poised to pass a stopgap bill to avert government shutdown. NBC News. The House is poised to pass new Speaker Mike Johnson's bill to avert a government shutdown, punting the GOP's spending fight until after the holidays. Below are your comments. So bad at the job that the nation is forced to lurch from crisis to crisis. They clearly have no plan for how to govern effectively. No wonder they rail on and on about how government doesn't work. Too bad they're the ones driving the bus. I am first to say, I love my representatives and they do so much for me. The CR also will give agitated lawmakers, who've been in session for 10 straight weeks, a chance to take a break from one another. Oh my! The poor dears have been session for 10 weeks? Oh, the humanity! Who will save the poor Congress members? Have mercy. Next news. George Santos staffer who impersonated Kevin McCarthy aide pleads guilty. He could face 20 years in prison. USA Today. The second aide to the New York Republican to plead guilty, Samuel Mealy, who has impersonated an aide to Kevin McCarthy, admitted to wire fraud. Below are your comments. My Kevin helped Katara, George Santos with funding along with Elise Stefanik. Those two should also be investigated for aiding and abetting a crime. I'm assuming that both these staffers went rogue. Santos needs to learn from the dump to only hire the best people. Oh wait, he clearly has. Really, how did the NY 3rd elect this guy? Georgie should have stuck to the pyramid schemes and low-profile scammers' life. Tut. Next news. Ukraine aid should come in weeks, not months, Smith says. Politico. Kyiv can hold on, but they would not be in as strong a position, the top Democrat said. Below are your comments. Need to separate the bills, one for Israel and one for Ukraine. That is the problem, to put both on one. One is what most Americans want as Israel and one is Biden's pet bill Ukraine, where he got Hunter the money. Need one item per bill for anything. Nothing is coming unless he is going to open up his own wallet. Do not forget to send the inside trading money from Pelosi and Schumer for the Ukraine dictator war package. Ha ha. Dictator Biden's war. Pope Francis says NATO instigated war by barking at Putin's door, labeled conspiracy theorist. Next news. Tim Burchett says Kevin McCarthy elbowed him in the back. HuffPost. The Tennessee Republican suggested the former speaker is still mad that he voted to take away his gavel. Below are your comments. It is not in the nature of Republican politics that the best men or women should run for or serve in office. The best men and women are not Republicans. This is what the formerly proud Republican Party has devolved into. We're all witnessing the total and complete collapse of the GOP. It's inevitable, nothing can stop it from happening. Tim needs to go back to looking for UFOs. Burchett is just another MAGA sprouting Trumpian looking for an invitation to Mar-a-Lago. A republic, madam, if we can keep it. Next news. Florida man fake Trump presidential pardon and tried a hitman to avoid fraud charges. USA Today. Alexander Leshinsky was sentenced for fraud and bleep for hire. He tried to use a presidential pardon on behalf of former President Donald Trump. Below are your comments. Just the kind of guy that Trump would pardon. 20 is old enough to know right plus wrong. Rot in jail, you deserve it. Trump was selling pardons for $2 million apiece. I would have just written Trump a bad check for $2 million and gotten a real pardon. Like this guy could afford a Trump pardon. He hasn't got that kind of cash. He's ambitious, you have to give him that. Next news. For historically conservative Jewish Americans, Biden's response to Israel receives praise. NBC News. American Jews have taken note, according to several leaders who say they have observed a shift, particularly among groups that didn't previously support Biden. Below are your comments. Only about 2.4% of U.S. adults are Jewish. A drop in the bucket compared to young voters. And independents completely turned off to Biden. At this point, Biden needs to resign! He will lose the election anyway. The Democrats need a more viable option for a presidential candidate. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.